Hello, and welcome to the 7th episode of Analyzing Fathers. The purpose of this series is to take a deep dive into the life and parenting of fathers, both fictional and real, to see what, if anything, we can learn from them as current and future fathers. Today, we will be taking a look at the parenting of Ken Titus from the television series Titus. This was the first suggestion I got on my channel from @GenerationY Entertainment 2455. As it's the first, I'd like to thank them and give them a shout out because I had never seen the series and it was very well done. So thank you. And thank everyone who has made any suggestions before or in the future. I'm not going to be doing any more shout outs though. The television show Titus was a comedic look at the life of comedian Christopher Titus and his relationship with his family. If Christopher, the son, was the show's protagonist or hero, then his father, Ken Titus, was most assuredly the antagonist, the villain. Not in a way that meant he was executing weekly plots to ruin his son's day, although on a few occasions he did just that. No, rather because he was more often than not the root cause of the drama of the week, due to emotional, physical, and mental abuse he put his sons Christopher and Dave through over the years. Many of the episodic plots revolve around dealing with some sort of trauma that Ken inflicted on them. For example, the very first episode deals with Chris, Dave, their best friend Tommy, and Christopher's girlfriend Erin thinking Ken is dead in his room because he hasn't left his room in several days to get a beer. All four of them are too terrified of Ken to disturb him. Kenneth Titus is referred to sometimes as Papa Titus because the group often referred to Christopher by his last name. While he is often the antagonist, at times he can take on the role of an anti-hero or an anti-villain, depending on the episode. Ken's goals throughout the series can be summed up as this: encouraging others with tough love and negative reinforcement. His go-to motivational phrase for his children is, "Don't be a wussy," or calling someone a wussy with varying degrees of aggression in his tone. Ken was a salesman and a mechanic majority of his life, although he had a dream to be a drag car racer. He gave up that dream, however, to raise his children. His favorite hobbies are drinking, womanizing, and insulting others. He is a hard-drinking, chain-smoking misanthrope who revels in pulling cruel pranks on his kids in order to make them tough or teach a lesson. For example, he told his son Christopher to stick something into an electrical socket so that he'd learn not to do it. To quote his son Christopher, "A mother gives you knowledge. A father makes you earn it. My father was never one to teach me. He was the one to stand back and let the scars of learning happen." Ken also makes several jokes about race, so that one could say he was a racist. I didn't get the vibe he was racist, just that he told some pretty funny, inappropriate jokes in an attempt to lighten the mood. Christopher Titus once described his father as, quote, his deepest, darkest fear. But this isn't to say he thinks his father doesn't love him. The opposite, in fact. To quote Titus, "It's not that he doesn't love me, because he does. It's just that special kind of love that feels like neglect." Ken Titus is a well-known alcoholic whose prominent trait is his aggressive, arrogant, and overly straightforward nature. He is brutally honest with everyone, everywhere, at all times. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are. Ken Titus is going to tell it like it is and will be ready to stand on his opinions, even under the threat of violence. He once punched a man for saying Jean-Claude Van Damme would kick Clint Eastwood's ass. Ken taught his children integrity, as per Christopher Titus. He says his father never missed an alimony payment to any of his ex-wives, and he never lied. In Ken's own words, quote, "I cheated. I never lied. If I'd lied to you, you'd never know that I had cheated. Don't question my integrity." At one point, he was fully ready to commit murder of his ex-wife in front of their child and two friends, while his son and girlfriend had a custody agent for their niece they were trying to adopt in the next room. Granted, the mother, Juanita, was a manic schizophrenic who had been admitted multiple times, had killed a man who was beating her, and had pushed Ken Titus to the limit after 30 years of torture, attempted murders, and other things. Although Ken may have had a hand in this. As per his son's description, every woman that has ever loved Ken has tried to kill him. Because of his heavy smoking and drinking, Ken's health is a common issue throughout the show. He had 3 heart attacks in his life and a few scares. He was even stabbed in the chest by his 4th wife. Despite this, Ken refuses to quit smoking and drinking for any reason. His earthquake kick consists of vodka and pills. But on the one occasion that he actually did stop drinking, his family came together to have an intervention for him to start drinking again. Even his boss showed up because Ken could only function at work when drunk. After quitting for a brief period, Ken became depressed and couldn't figure out why. Chris explained that, quote, "Without the sweet, sweet fog of alcohol, you're seeing your pathetic life for what it really is." Ken was mean-spirited and evil, but when he was drunk, which he was often, he was tolerable and shockingly charismatic, despite being a single father, multiple divorcees, 6 times to be precise, and an alcoholic chain smoker, he had zero trouble with women. His 6 marriages evidence of this. Any chance Ken had in speaking to any woman he considers attractive, he would use his charm on them. Ken's numerous issues likely stem from his relationship with his own parents. We weren't given much, but it's enough to reach conclusions. The relationship between them wasn't good. In fact, it was so negative that Ken lied to his son that his mother had died, and then lied to his mother that his son had died, so she would stay away. Ken had a cruel, vindictive mother and a drunken, partying father. He says that his mother drove his father to booze and women. After not seeing him for a while, his mother's response was, "Oh, Kenneth, I thought I smelled a loser." Something that sounds right up the alley of what Ken himself would say to his own children. It seemed like Ken was afraid of her. Throughout his life, she had constantly made him step on garden tools so they would hit him in the face. She got much joy from seeing it. Once, she asked little Ken to get her some iced tea. When he did, he got whacked upside the head with a garden tool. She burst into laughter, saying, "I never get tired of that. I don't even like iced tea." Of his father, we learned nothing else, leading me to believe that he wasn't around, or that if he was around, he wasn't involved. The most common theme between Ken Titus and his kids is his tough love approach to anything. He truthfully has the same nonchalant, tough sort of outlook about everything. Christopher refers to him as a tragedy commando. He jokes that his father is dead inside. His son refers to him as the dream stomper. A young Christopher came home saying, quote, "Dad, my teacher said we can be anything when we grow up." To which he replied, "She wasn't talking to you, son." Another time, Christopher had this to say, quote, "At one point, my dream was that my dad would let me have a dream. That is the saddest thing I have ever heard said on a sitcom before a laugh track." Ken is quick to rub defeat, dislike, or disagreement in his kids' faces. It's said that the odds of getting praise from their father were lower than meeting the Pope's wife in a submarine. So much so that Chris and Dave were overjoyed when Ken said "not bad" to something they'd done. Once, he admitted to not even remembering his son's middle name. One might ask, why then do his children and their friends continue to be around Ken Titus? Hell, the entirety of the series, Christopher struggled to get the respect and admiration of his father, whom he said was, quote, "a negative, judgmental pain in the ass who destroyed my self-esteem and tortured me my entire life." Well, it's because when the chips are down, Ken Titus will stand with you against the entire world. Ken made sure his children were provided for, and that even if he was drunk, he was there, talking to them, teaching them, albeit through dubious means at times, and leading by example. Dave isn't Ken's child by blood. One of his ex-wives split and left Dave. When questioned about it, Ken said, quote, "You make a decision and you stick with it, no matter how much it screws up your life. That's why I kept you kids." Ken went as far as to kidnap Christopher from his grandparents in another state after they had taken him away. Ken believed that his children were best with him. He used his charm to sleep with the judge of the custody hearing so he'd win custody of his son. After Christopher is in a race car explosion and might die, we get insight into Papa Titus' feelings about his son. He's torn up and sad as any father would be. Ken admits that having Christopher made him better, something I will agree with as well. His alcoholism and womanizing were terrible with kids. It would have been significantly worse without the responsibility of child rearing. When his son's hot rod shop starts to fail, Ken helps Chris get his girlfriend back and convinces him that he's not an alcoholic. He actually even gave solid advice that worked. He truly loves his son, and on some rare occasions that vulnerable, worried father breaks free from beneath the drunken, cigarette smoke-covered exterior. Such as when Erin, Christopher's girlfriend, lied and made them think the other had bone cancer. Ken was shown openly weeping and distraught. Despite it all and his attempts to prove otherwise, his children know that he loves them and will do anything for them. It will just come with beratement and some drunken scorn. His children understand this and accept it. To quote Chris, "I am the grateful, loving child of your drunken abuse." So what can we, as current fathers, learn from Kenneth Titus? Being men of our word, Ken never lied. He was upfront and honest to a fault. It was often a detriment to him, but despite this, he kept his word and stuck to his guns. He was an abusive drunk, but everyone trusted his word and held his opinion with some regard due to this. Being more discerning with our relationships and controlling our sexual urges, Ken Titus was a slave to his lust. It is said that a man who controls his stomach, penis, and tongue has solved 99% of his problems. If that's true, then Ken has been failing. He sleeps with anything moving and finds great joy in it. Nearly all of his problems can be traced back to his penis or his mouth. 2 of his 6 ex-wives tried to kill him, and once he used Christopher to calm down a hooker that had him dead to rights with a shotgun. Ken jokingly calls it the Battle of Little Big Whore. being there. Any person raised as Ken Titus was could fall into a life of drugs or abusing their children in the same manner they received. While Ken was most certainly not the best parent, if he had been as terrible as his parents were to him, Chris, Dave, Tommy, and the other stepchildren wouldn't stay around or deal with him. They do because they know despite it all their father loves them because he was there to show it. In between the drinking, whoring, and pranks, there were good times, wholesome times, lessons taught and stories shared. Ken never left, and he never allowed himself to slip so far down that he couldn't perform his parental duties. Enough so that 2 out of the 3 children we're shown he raised turned out to be decent, functional members of society. Dave, however, is another story, and that isn't Papa Titus's fault. Dave is just an idiot. To call the father the antagonist of the show implies a lot on its own. Ken Titus could have been more, he could have been better, and he could have been nicer. But that wasn't him, and Ken, above all else, was always himself. His children clearly fear him, but also they love and respect him as well as trust him. I think this quote from Chris perfectly sums up who Ken Titus was. Quote, "My father never missed a drink in his life, or a joint, or a party, or a chance to get laid. He also never missed a day of work or a house payment or a car payment. I never went hungry, although he did a couple of times, so I wouldn't." Ken Titus may not have been the best, but he damn sure was a father. Thank you for watching this episode of Analyzing Fathers. Please like and subscribe for more father-related content, and comment below any fathers, both real and fictional, you'd like to see me analyze on this channel. In the next episode, we'll be taking a look at the parenting of Greg Universe from the cartoon Steven Universe and Steven Universe Future.